I've wanted to build this Power BI dashboard for at least the past 5 years. And this weekend, I completed my first major step in building it. Why have I waited so long to build this dashboard? Why is it so important to me? What kind of problem am I trying to solve? Well, let's talk about it. You see, the way most of us give end users access to Power BI reports is through apps. And your workspace has an app. The problem with this is that a lot of times your end users don't know when the reports within this workspace are refreshing. When was the last time they refreshed? When are they going to refresh next? There's just a lot of unknowns. One of the ways that people have done this is they put the last refresh date in the report. You can go ahead and you can roll over a report and you can find out some information about it by going into View Semantic Model. But to our Power BI end users, for the most part, they're kind of flying blind. So I've had this vision for a dashboard that's kind of like a departures or arrivals dashboard on an airport. It would list all of my reports out, like flights. It would list the next time that they are scheduled to refresh, and then it would list the last time that they refreshed, as well as the status of that. If I could get all of that information in a dashboard, I could embed it in the app, and then I could kind of get ahead of all of these. Is this report refreshed? When's the next refresh questions that you tend to get when you're deploying out to reporting at scale? Now, to Microsoft's credit, they have tried to solve this problem with this monitor section right here in the Power BI web UI. You can view the last status, the item type, the last start time, and who submitted it, as well as which workspace. So they have started to kind of build out this ad hoc monitoring. The problem is that business end users aren't going to know what your like data sets or your semantic models names are. They aren't going to know um, when the next start time is, and it just creates a lot of problems. You're dealing with a lot of unknowns. But with Semantic Link and Semantic Link Labs, which I've been taking a closer look at, especially over the past week, I realized that you could submit a request to Power BI's API and you could calculate out the next refresh date for any given data set just based on the reports you did. And I finished out the code to do that this weekend, and I'm super excited to share it with you today because it's kind of the first step in building out that dashboard. And I'm going to be kind of building that dashboard or that data set out over the next few videos. So with that, let me walk you through the code and let me show you how I calculated the next refresh for any given report. So first things first, I had to install Semantic Link Labs. The next step was I needed to create some dictionaries. So if you don't know, when you go to set up a Power BI report refresh, you can select any time zone. A dictionary in Python is essentially has a key and then a value. I needed a dictionary for every single date time that Power BI could be set to, and then the UTC offset. So the number of seconds from that time zone into universal standard time, which I think is UTC. I don't know for sure if that's what that UTC stands for. I really should. The next dictionary that I needed is essentially a day of the week, right? Which returns 0 for Monday and then all the way to 6 for Sunday. The API that I'm going to be using here is the datasets get refresh schedule for Power BI. So what this returns is this returns the days of the week that the Power BI report will refresh, the times that it's refreshed, if the schedule is enabled, the local time zone, so the time zone that the report is refreshing on, and then if it's who and what it's going to do when it fails. Okay. Now, in order to use Semantic Link and take in a report, I had to use a report function. So the first thing I had to do was fetch the dataset ID of the dataset the report is using. So I used the function resolve dataset from report. Then I submitted a request to get the refresh schedule for that dataset. Then I configured some local variables here. right? And I said, if the refresh schedule is not enabled, return uh, July 11th, 2011, which for those of you who don't know is actually when Power BI was launched. Then I converted the current date time into the same time zone as the Power BI refresh. Then for every single day and refresh time combination, I essentially configured or checked if that time had happened for this week. If it had already happened for this week, I then said, okay, show me the reoccurrence from next week, right? Which then gave me an array of all of the next refreshes per day, per time. I then simply had to get the earliest one of those. And then I returned that in UTC time zone. So what this function does is then you can feed it a report, the workspace for that report, and it returns the next scheduled refresh of that data set. Now that I have this function, if you tell me a report, I can tell you the next time it's scheduled to refresh. This is going to be very useful in building out my report arrivals and departures dashboard, because this is a core part of when my next reports refresh departure is. I'll be able to call this code for every single report in a workspace and run it repetitively over and over and over again in order to power my dashboard. So if you're interested in this code, it's going to be linked down in my GitHub on the video description. I published this code on LinkedIn, so if you're not following me on LinkedIn, please go give me a follow there. And if you're interested in seeing how I build this dashboard and what the end result is going to be, and learn about business intelligence, SQL, Python, Power BI, please consider subscribing and liking this video. Thank you for watching.